to bring to the House the coalition agreement. I just want to say that in that coalition agreement, if Honorable Mwanyi cared to read it carefully, it does not talk about sharing opposition outside the executive. Actually, positions that are supposed to be shared as per the coalition agreement are basically if NASA forms the executive. But on the issues of constitutional offices, Mr. Speaker, can you protect me from the majority leader and his deputy? And you know how loud the deputy is. So, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to say that it is very clear in the coalition agreement that commissions are not to be shared. There is no power sharing. So I wanted to start from there. Now, two, I want to put it very clearly that I made communication to Mr. Speaker's office on the issue of Parliamentary Service Commission. And this I did based on powers that I have in the standing orders and the Constitution as the leader of minority. But I wrote to you two letters. There's a first letter, and then I wrote another letter the following day, overriding the first letter. But before the letters were written, there was consultation, Mr. Speaker. I just want to clarify that there was consultation. It is not an individual decision. I want to just remind my colleague that at times there are organs of the party where you don't belong. And that one of them, where he doesn't belong, and one of the organs, Mr. Speaker, is the summit. This is a decision that summit has to discuss. And unfortunately, Honorable Ben Momanyi doesn't sit in the summit. So he may not be privy to discussions that went in there. But, Mr. Speaker, I just want to put it clearly that if there are concerns, we have our own internal mechanisms of resolving our disputes. I have a letter from WIPA written to me on the same topic, forwarding the name of Ben Momanyi. Unfortunately, the summit did not recommend him. And the person who wrote the letter, Mr. Speaker, is actually not mandated at all to direct me on what to do. So I have already answered to that letter. But I want to take it further, that this is a matter that can still be discussed within the coalition. And we have our internal mechanism, but the direction Honorable Mwanyi is taking may not help his cause, and I will tell him how. Mr. Speaker, we have 2 slots in the National Assembly and 1 slot in the Senate. If you look at that list, it has 2 members of ODM and 1 member of ANC. Now, I get to understand that Honorable Momanyi that wants the slot that is going to ANC to go to WIPA. Fine. Yeah, because according to the formula he's using, Mr. Speaker, will qualify what I'm saying. But the direction Honorable Momanyi is taking is very slippery. And I say that because if you take the numbers, the parliamentary parties, among the NASA affiliates, we have only 2 parliamentary parties. And that is ODM and WIPA. And the 2 have 99 members. The 2 slots in the National Assembly will all go to ODM if you use the formula. Because ODM qualifies for 1.6. Yes, I have calculated, you know, I'm very good in mathematics. Unlike my colleague, my leader of majority, who I think went to Egerton and studied something else. I actually studied issues of calculation at the University of Nairobi. So, Mr. Speaker, at least I have the privilege of knowing numbers. And I will tell you for a fact that if you work with that calculation and you get 76 members of ODM over 99, with the 2 members, you get 1.6. So ODM will take the 2 slots. You go to the Senate, ODM will take the other slot. So it is in the interest of the coalition to debate this matter as a matter of coalition issue holistically without going now to our constituent parties. Because if we go that direction, Mr. Speaker, the result may not be very pleasant, because I want to have this. I even wrote the when we are discussing a matter where you have personal interest. And by the way, he is right. He's a very senior member, a well-known lawyer in this country who qualifies to sit in Parliamentary Service Commission. But you should have disclosed and declared your interest that you want to sit there, and you have the way you told me that you have been shortchanged. I want to just clarify that you have not been shortchanged, only you are not considered, but you can still be considered. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a matter for us as a coalition. Otherwise, thank you very much. I hope now I've explained some of the issues that were disturbing, that could have disturbed members. But I know that my colleagues on the other side would be very happy to see. That is why Honorable Ngwenyi is not sympathetic to Momanyi. He is very clear.
Honorable Jimmy Ngwenyi.
You know, Honorable Jimmy Ngwenyi has just come, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Jimmy Ngwenyi has just come from a meeting where they have been ordered even on who to be the chairs of committees. And he thinks that is what we are doing this side. We are not. I'm fully in charge here, unlike where you go and get directions from some house somewhere. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Now, honourable members, what's your point of order?
The Speaker, honourable leader, is trying to deny the membership of this House, who have the right to elect whoever represents them in the next commission, dealing with their welfare, that this House has no local standard. Speaker, Honorable Momanyi read Article 127, subsection C, Roman 1 and 2. Speaker, as the custodian of the Constitution and the protection of the standing orders and the rights of members, that's Roman 2, Mr. Speaker, is very, very clear. It says there shall be nominated, C says 7 members appointed by Parliament from among its members, of whom Roman 2 says 3 shall be nominated by parties not forming the national government, at least one of which shall be nominated from each house, and at least one whom shall be a woman. So, Speaker, it's very, very clear. When it comes to parties that don't form the national government, and in this case, the parties that don't form the national government in this House is ODM and WIPA, because those are the only 2 parties which are parliamentary parties within the reading of the standing order. So Honorable Momanyi, Mr. Speaker, has raised a serious constitutional issue, that whether it is Momanyi, whether it is Makali Mulu, whether it is Honorable Rashid of Wajir East, any member of WIPA sitting in this House, Mr. Speaker, as per that provision of the Constitution, is entitled to a slot. And Mr. Speaker, we want you to give direction tomorrow before I move this motion. You must give direction, because we will not sit here, even those of us who are in Jubilee, when one parliamentary party is being muzzled, is being suffocated by its bigger brother. Speaker, Honorable Mbandi, yes, you can have 99 members. I do have 220 members, but I allow them to enjoy their freedom. No, you must. Yes, I have 220. I have 220 members here. You know. Mr. Speaker, you know I am a pastoralist, Mr. Speaker, and in the pastoral community, your wealth is measured by the number of camels you own. So when I look at Honorable Bandi, you know, grandstanding with 99 members, I ask myself, Jubilee alone, Jubilee as a party, has 172 members. With our affiliates and independents, we have 220. Mr. Speaker, each and every member, even the independents, must have a voice and a vote on who to represent him in the Parliamentary Service Commission. Mr. Speaker, we should not bring party dictatorship to the floor. You can exercise your party dictatorship outside, but when it comes to the floor, Mr. Speaker, the standing order and the Constitution rise. Mr. Speaker, I gave notice, but I want you to address this House tomorrow before we move the motion. on Article 127, C, Roman 2, and declare as our Speaker and set a precedent and a tradition that a party known as Wiper, which is a parliamentary party, is entitled to a slot in PAC or no? We need to know it, because tomorrow some of us might be having small parties, parliamentary parties, and we want to use this provision. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Mbandi must be honest to the people of Kenya. And he should tell us the first list that he withdrew, who are the members. Yes, and tell this House why you removed Memusi, the member for Kajiado Central, and replaced him. Because you are telling us you have a letter sent to the Speaker, you have withdrawn, you have sent another one, Momanyi should pass through the summit. Every member of Parliament here does not need to pass a summit to exercise his right under Article 94 of the Constitution. So, Mr. Speaker, we need to know what happened to Memusi. What crime has he committed? Who replaced him? Who replaced Memusi? Was he replaced because he is a pastoralist? He's a minority. Is he a Maasai? And Mr. Speaker, we the pastoralists, we told Memusi a long time ago, where you have gone, you will not get pasture and water as a pastoralist. We told him. But now today I can see, and Mr. Speaker, in your communication, you should tell the House how many letters Honorable Mbandi has written to you. I only write one letter to the Speaker. Yes, because I do consult the 220 and the party leader. Yes, this culture of, and that's why, we miss Jakoyo here. Jakoyo used to write, and the late Nyenze used to write one letter. But Honorable Mbandi keeps on writing letter in the morning, in the afternoon, at night. So, Mr. Speaker, please.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me a chance. Mr. Speaker, looking at the standing orders, what we have before the House is a notice of motion. So everybody who has spoken on that notice of motion should have been ruled out of order, in my understanding of the standing orders. But that aside, Mr. Speaker, the issue that has been brought before the House, to me, is a demonstration of embarrassment and how we are not able to take charge of our own responsibilities. This matter shouldn't have been brought to the floor. I do agree, Honorable Momanyi has got a valid point, genuine and very grave. The response of Honorable Mbadi is not bad. But all this that you are listening to, Mr. Speaker, point at one issue, that there's a dispute within the coalition. It is not within your ambit, Mr. Speaker, to deal with that. That is done under the Political Parties Act. There's a procedure for reconciliation and dealing with the disputes under that act. So what is being raised before the House shouldn't be here. Personally, as a member of NASA, I feel embarrassed that all these are coming here. I kindly urge you, Mr. Speaker, that this notice of motion should remain where it is, no further discussion on it now, so that if there's a need to handle this, we deal with it at a later stage. But what we are doing now is actually washing our dirty linen in public, in the House. It's not the right way. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Ruaraka.
Mr. Speaker, sir, it is interesting how this debate has been going. First of all, you notice that you do not have a motion which has been presented before you and which has been proposed by which members can now debate. But there are interesting issues of law, which I think, if not discussed properly, will lead members to think that there is something which is happening here that is unusual. Mr. Speaker, sir, you remember you gave a ruling, and this House is a house of rules governed by traditions and precedents. You gave a ruling in this House in the 11th Parliament concerning my very good friend, Honorable Moshetani. In that ruling, Mr. Speaker, sir, you remember Honorable Moshetani was a member of Ford Kenya and was de-whipped by the coalition that he belonged. And you said in several but very good words that Honorable Moshetani, being a member of Ford Kenya and not being a member of a parliamentary party, was therefore exercising his mandate at the behest of the coalition that formed the minority party. I think that is a decision which is in the annals. And if my friends would care check, you will find it very consistent with what has happened today. Because Honorable Mamanyi has read the law quite clearly. And in 127C2 talks about by the parties not forming the government. It means that, as Honorable the minority leader has said, it means that the parties not forming government will give names according to the parties arrangements. In fact, put crudely, ODM can donate to whichever party that is not forming the government at its own discretion. It has nothing to do with the coalition arrangement. And Mr. Speaker, sir, this has nothing to do with a coalition dispute. There is no coalition dispute here. This is about reading the law and then exercising that law according to the mathematical arrangements that works within that political party. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, let us not create further for Jubilee that this afternoon they are very happy and very awake, enjoying how much issues are coming from NASA. This is just a matter which we can go back to the law and the ruling of this House, and we'll find that it is properly done within the law. And I request, Mr. Speaker, that we stop this debate and wait for that motion to come. And all of us, we will table that ruling here, we will discuss that ruling here, and Jubilee will find that even though this morning also, as the leader of a majority wants us to believe that he's a very generous man who allows everybody to exercise his discretion, they were, the word called guillotine was used this morning, Mr. Speaker, sir, in a meeting in which the president himself was the chair. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Well, I think, honourable members, the issue, maybe we don't need to debate to go further in the contributions, because indeed there is no motion. What has happened is that the Honourable Ben Mamanyi rose in his place, claiming to be on a point of order, and it is within his right to do so. If you look at your own standing orders, they say at any point, at any stage, any member may rise in their place and claim to be standing on a point of order. And therefore, he was within his right to do so. But I think also what the Honorable Kajwang has pointed out is pertinent, because if you look at that Article 127, Clause 2, paragraph C, Romans 1 and 2, they seem to make some distinctions. Roman 1 speaks to parties or coalition of parties forming the national government. If you look at Roman 1, party or coalition of parties forming the national government will provide 4 names, 2 from each of the houses, and of course the gender issues. Roman 2, which the Honorable Kajwang has referred to, does not make reference to coalition. Does not make reference to coalition. Just feel free to look at it. It talks of parties, and therefore the Honorable Kajwang is right to say that indeed the parties, and I am attracted to the language used about the bigger party donating. I think it's a very good, it's a very attractive suggestion. So even if it happens that they may desire to donate, I think it's a good suggestion. But nevertheless, I think I would wish to encourage the leader of the minority party and his leadership to indeed just address this matter. It's a matter I believe you can address. It's within your purview. You can address it quietly without the glare of the television cameras. certainly not at the press center, because at the press center things tend to get worse. So I think, Honorable John Badi, I don't want to leave the matter at that point, but obviously, since this was just notice of motion, obviously, if that matter, in the same manner, I think, should it rise tomorrow when the motion is being debated, then appropriate decisions may have to be made on how to progress. But for now, I don't think whether I need to make any ruling. There is no need for me to make any ruling because I assume that those allegations are in the matter of jest between the two of you, because you seem to be very good friends, the Honorable John Bandi and the Honorable Duale. So I occasionally assume that some of the things you say about each other are in jest. Now, there's a member, a very old member of the House, who has forgotten the rules of the House. The other point, of course, I wanted to make to advise the Honorable Ben Momanyi is that the document, the photocopy of the document that he purported to table, doesn't quite seem to show. It's not very legible as to the date when it purports to have been made. It's dated something which is not very legible, but it seems to read February 2017. But unfortunately, being titled Coalition Agreement is the kind of document that would have expected to bear some signatures and some stamp. Now, could be something that's not legible, whether it was a stamp, but certainly it doesn't seem to have any signatures. And therefore, in keeping with our rules and standards, it would be inadmissible. So I would want to give it back to the owner. So it's not part of the records of the House. It is inadmissible because for the reason stated. The Honorable Ferdinand Wanyonyi is a member for Kwanza. Member for Kwanza.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order number 33, I wish to seek leave of this House in order to discuss the urgent matter of national importance regarding the cruising road accidents that have persistently rocked various parts of the country, claiming over 40 lives within 2 days in Baringo, Bungoma, Machakos, and most latest on the 14th kilometer stretch of the road between Salga in Nakuru County. Honorable Speaker, much has been said about the 14 kilometer stretch of the road Salga-Sankwanya that has become a notorious black spot in the country, where hardly a week goes by before a Crimson Road accident is reported in the deadly road and claim many lives over the years. Honorable Speaker, besides sending messages of condolence, rebuking drivers, and waiting for the next accident to happen, Mr. Speaker, the government, through relevant authorities, have done too little to bring lasting solution to the maintenance of this stretch road. The Salga road is slopey, winding, narrow, and yet the traffic is heavy, mixed with coupled with limited visibility and a steep inclination that do not aid safety, especially for the heavy commercial trucks and the buses. Honorable Speaker, I appreciate the fact that strict enforcement of the traffic regulations will eliminate most of the human error in this dirty road. It's necessary at this point to rethink and redesign of the road, while erection of the speed bumps could not only provide short-term solutions, the construction of the dual carriageway may provide a reasonable, lasting solution to the problem. It is this regard, Honorable Speaker, I wish to indulge you to seek leave of the House to discuss this matter of national concern. I move.
Honorable Wanyonyi, you've given notice.
Yes.
You know, now these guys are the crowd here.
No.
Do you have the numbers?
You start one. Start. Salga.
Well, Honorable Wanyonyi, you have the numbers. It's only, but I'm just doubtful whether these members even heard what it is that they are they are rising to support. But you have the numbers. Maybe when you move the motion, they will only get the message. Very well, Honorable Wanyonyi.
Yes.
Obviously, Honorable members, that the matter that Honorable Wanyonyi has raised is quite urgent, and indeed it is a matter that everybody is discussing for the last few days. I won't, therefore, accord the Honorable Wanyonyi such time not exceeding 1 hour, which would mean, since the House rises at 7 p.m., if the House finishes a debate on the 3 bills that are listed as number 8, 9, and 10, then the House can debate this motion, but not in excess of 1 hour. If the debate on these 3 motions will still be going on, the House then will rise at the hour of 6 p.m. to enable you to move your motion, Honorable Wanyonyi. But should the House finish earlier, then you will still, you should be available to move your motion. So it's up to you, Honorable Wanyonyi, to keep monitoring how business is being transacted. Honourable members, those honourable members, those of you who are withdrawing from the chamber, please, you have no business to go dragging each other as if you are in a duel. Just walk out gently, like the honourable gentlemen that you are supposed to be, and the gracious ladies that you are meant to be. So please, allow us to transact the business.
Order number 7, statements.
The Honorable John Bandi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as this House may be aware already now that we lost one of our colleagues, the Honorable Francis Nyenze, EGH MP for Kitui West, and the immediate former leader of the late Honorable Francis Nyenze. Further, Mr. Speaker, and finally, I also wanted to make this House aware that there is already a committee constituted to plan and organize the burial arrangements of our brother. And this committee has 10 members of the National Assembly and 4 staff members. The members of National Assembly are the Honorable Aden Duale, EGH, Leader of Majority, the Honorable John Badi, CBS, the Leader of Minority Party, Dr. Makali Mulu, who will be chairing because both of us are a bit committed with other things, Honorable Patrick Makau, Gideon Muliungi, Cecil Mbarire, Jessica Mbalu, Katole Metito, Chris Wamalwa, and Joyce Kamene. Those are the members of that committee. And I don't want to say more, Mr. Speaker, because we had used the floor of this House to express our sympathies and condolences with the family, friends, and relatives of the late Honorable Francis Nyenze. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
And I think
the Leader of Majority.
Leader of Majority.
Mr. Speaker, it has been our practice since the 10th Parliament, the 11th Parliament. When we lose one of our own, we collectively contribute 10,000 shillings to the funeral expenses to the family of that member who passes on. So it has been our tradition, and usually we use it through check-off system. So, and I'm sure Honorable Nyenze was a great leader, a member of Parliament, and I'm sure all of us, that small little contribution, Mr. Speaker. Because I don't know, you have to give us some loan, because there are some members who may not even have 10,000. It is there because there's mortgage. Mr. Speaker, it's true. After you take mortgage, you take car loan. I mean, you're nothing remaining with your payslip. The people must know that. I think it's time we must, people know that the Kenyan people have, as Zara Serem, have done what they have done. But I'm sure in the 10th Parliament, 11th Parliament, and even now the 12th Parliament, every time we lose one of our own, we, through a check-off system, we pay 10,000. And I'm sure the family of Honorable Nyenze will always appreciate that the contribution of his colleagues. Parliament, Mr. Speaker, is like a school. He is one of our colleagues. And I really want to ask members that once the burial date is set, all of us can spare time from a busy schedule and we go and give our colleague, our elder, our leader, a deserving send-off. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Kitui Central.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as the chairman of the Planning Committee for Honorable Nyenze's burial, I want to take this opportunity to thank the Public Service Commission, the Parliamentary Service Commission, and more so you, Mr. Speaker, and the Office of the Clerk for the support you have given to the Planning Committee up to this time. Mr. Speaker, we have agreed on the key dates. Today evening, we are doing the fundraiser. On Friday, there will be the church funeral service at Sitam Karen. And then next week on Tuesday, Mr. Speaker, we'll be resting our brother. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to appeal to all the honorable members to continue supporting us, just the way you have done up to this moment. And my appeal is today evening, please, honorable members, the fundraiser will just be next at Tintin Restaurant. So it will be a very good show for us as honorable members to come and be seen there as we support our colleague in the fundraising. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to once more to say thank you very much. And really, we are appreciating as a planning committee what the House is doing to the committee. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. I think the members are accordingly informed. Next.
Order number 8, the Building Surveyors Bill, National Assembly Bill number 35 of 2017, second reading.
Who was on the floor? Okay, honorable members, there was nobody who was on the floor, and so far, only 15 members have contributed to this debate on this bill. So any member is at liberty to contribute. I see first person appearing on the screen is the member for Makueni.
And thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute on this proposed bill, on the Building Surveyors Bill. Mr. Speaker, this bill seems to reproduce the Architects and the Quantity Surveyors Act in a way, and does not seem to define who a building surveyor exactly is. Because there are quantity surveyors, there are building surveyors, and when you look at what this building maintenance means, it is a clearly work undertaken by architects, builders, and quantity surveyors. And particularly, though it is a very good law, it should come out clearly what exactly is to be done by who, because once you see the work they purport to undertake, like rehabilitation, reclamation, preparation of course of maintenance and schedules of planning, budgeting, and management of maintenance works, it is exactly the same job done by architects, engineers, etc. So I believe at third reading, we'll be proposing amendments so that it is clear who exactly a building surveyor is, because the person who is described in the proposed section 22 in this bill is not clearly defined who that particular person is. Probably there are people who could be working or cannot work by themselves, but work under supervision of architects and engineers, but not entirely by themselves. And therefore, if there is going to be a law of this nature proposed, Mr. Speaker, then it should be clear, because construction work is a very serious work. We have seen what has happened in the country of late, a lot of buildings collapsing and killing people, investments which have been done without input of architects, quantity surveyors, and others. And we want to avoid a situation whereby this particular group of people who are seeking legislation end up acting with a law which is not entirely covering what they do or their scope of work, and ends up forming an association which is a duplicate or could easily belong into other associations, as has already been put forward by other acts of parliament, Mr. Speaker, which we have already passed in the past. There is an issue of registration. It is a board, which definitely, according to the memorandum of objects and the reasons herein, is clear that is an extra expense to the budget, to the budgetary allocations of the country. The country has had a policy to reduce boards or organizations which are likely to eat into the budget, and especially when there are construction works. You've got quality undertaking and surveying of where buildings will be constructed, so that it doesn't end up being a burden to citizens, and it's an organization which is seeking to draw from the budget. Ordinarily, organizations of this nature, like the Law Society of Kenya, the Architects organization, which does controls within, they do not draw from the national budget, but members make contributions and are able to run their affairs. So even this one, we'll be proposing amendments so that if the House agrees with the leader or majority and passes this as law, then it is able to be self-sustained by its members and can be able to regulate the members. We have seen that there is a role of a cabinet secretary for the time being responsible for matters relating to housing. That is the same department. You have architects, you have quantity surveyors, you have engineers, and they are under the same umbrella. And therefore, there is a high chances of duplication in this bill. And Mr. Speaker, I will be supporting it, and especially with the further amendments. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me that opportunity.
Sakwa Bunyasi, member for Nambale.
I think I spoke to this, Mr. Speaker, so I was queuing for the next one.
Member for Lam West.
Mr. Speaker, I raise to support this bill because you know the current situation that we have experienced, buildings or structures in the county collapsing, in the country collapsing. We should have regulations and rules that governs and protects the common mwananchi, who in the one way or the other is a layman. So I raise to support this motion, and this should also be exercised also at the county level. So whatever is policies we are going to come up with, they should also be exercised at the county levels, so that as we move forward, we all progress like any other towns. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Mwingi Central.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to oppose this bill. The reason for opposing this bill is because this building surveyor is an ambiguous person. I don't have an idea who this person is. I'm speaking as an architect in the building industry. And the players in the building industry are known. And this bill may be introducing quacks in the construction industry. We know the players in the construction building industry are architects, engineers, quantity surveyors, land surveyors, valuers, but this building surveyor, I have no idea who this guy is. And even when you look at the definitions in this act, in this bill, the building surveyor is not defined who he is. It is not even defined where he went to school, which secondary school, which university, what are his qualifications, what is the degree which they deemed. It is not here in this bill. So we could be passing a bill of quacks to go and construct buildings which are going to start collapsing again and killing our people. If, Mr. Speaker, if you look at section 22 of this act, it talks about upon application for registration under section 30. If you go to section 30, section 30 talks about financial year. So even the drafters of this bill didn't even know what they were talking about. It's completely confused. If you go to section 21, which talks about conditions and the qualifications, that's where you are supposed to find who is this guy. He's not even said who this guy is. So, Mr. Speaker, I strongly oppose this bill, and it needs to be taken back to the drafters so that they can tell us who this bill belongs to, so that we can be able to pass it. Further, Mr. Speaker, if you go to section 29 here, it talks about drawing money from the exchequer. We know that government is struggling to raise money. And here we are introducing a bill of a professional who is not known in the construction industry and who is going to start drawing money from the exchequer. When the government is busy reducing our salaries, I think the money going to this bill should come to increase our salaries. It's a wasted effort. Because if you finally if you go to the statement of the bill, at the end of the bill, it is very clear that the enactment of this bill shall occasion additional expenditure of public funds to be provided through the estimates. And yet you don't know who this guy is. So, Mr. Speaker, I strongly oppose this bill, and I propose that it be taken back to the drafters to do it properly and tell us what are the qualifications of these people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Sirisia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me a chance also to speak. Mr. Speaker, this bill, my colleague there has come up with something that it's really shocking, because he's an architect. He has been in this government as an architect. And I was also going to support this bill, Mr. Speaker. But according to the architect, member of parliament of this house, who has opposed, and with the reasons given to this house, Mr. Speaker, we better check if indeed the bill is correct, if the drafters are the correct people or they are cheating. Mr. Speaker, we have had a lot of problems in this country where many people have died because of such like things, Mr. Speaker, because of constructing buildings that are not worthy. And it has killed innocent people. Many people have lost their lives. And it's now the highest time, Mr. Speaker, when information like this come, we take it seriously and save the lives of our people, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I also oppose this bill, Mr. Speaker, because we don't want to lose many Kenyans. We don't want buildings to collapse, people die.
Completely done away with the language that is being used. The bill was, the motion, Mr. Speaker, was still talking about there being a Kenya Sugar Board. We did away with the Kenya Sugar Board in 2015. So, Mr. Speaker, we are talking about things that are not correct in this House, and honorable members and whoever is behind the drafting is not taking time to bring this House, documents that have been thoroughly researched. That particular document went further to say very many things, including reinstatement of the Coffee Development Fund, which was also done away with, and the Commodities Fund was created. So I don't know, Mr. Speaker, where this is coming from, and I think we need to be careful as a House to have the right people in the right place so that we may be able to talk the right things, so that we do not mislead Kenyans in passing legislations that are going to commit this country and mislead ourselves and others. Mr. Speaker, I stand to oppose this bill with reasons. Number one, Mr. Speaker, we are not very clear who the building surveyors are. We need to be very, 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 very clear who they are and where they are anchored in the Kenyan professional lines. We also need to be very clear what exactly they want to be done, and in any case, whether this bill has followed the right procedure. We know, Mr. Speaker, the money bills follow a certain procedure, and I am very sure that if it is a money bill, there must have been some consultations. Mr. Speaker, we need to be very clear, since it is coming in for the second reading, we need to know whether this bill has been properly, adjudicated by the different committees or the different responsible persons, so that it is here in its right condition, and therefore we may be able to give our contributions. in view of what the professionals in the House are saying, Mr. Speaker, I stand to oppose this bill. And I would like this House to be probably given an opportunity to have a better drafted bill that is very clear and that is able to give us proper, information that we can stand upon. And therefore, we are passing a legislation or passing the bill towards a legislation, then we are able to pass something that we can stand by. I oppose, Mr. Speaker.
Well, there being no other member desirous of contributing, and then to the motion, and then call upon the mover to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the onset, I want to thank all members who made valuable contribution to this bill. But Mr. Speaker, for record purposes, the Building Surveyors Bill is in this House accordingly and according to the Constitution. It's been subjected by the relevant ministry to public participation. It has passed through the cabinet, and it was forwarded to the House by the Attorney General of the Republic of Kenya, who by law is supposed to forward legislative proposal of the executive to Parliament. And Mr. Speaker, once we form the relevant committee that will look at this bill and present a report to the House, is the only time when we shall bring this bill for the third reading. And Mr. Speaker, the principal object, the reason why we have this bill before this House is to regulate the activities and the conduct of building surveyors. It's very, very important, Mr. Speaker, that the way there is a conduct of how lawyers behave in this country and how doctors carry their functions, we must have a law that takes care of how we regulate the activities and the conduct of building surveyors. And Mr. Speaker, that's why this bill is providing for the establishment of Building Surveyors Registration Board, its composition, conduct. Mr. Speaker, there are many quacks. There are many, many quacks out there who are masquerading as surveyors, as building surveyors. And certifying buildings. And that's why you see many Kenyans are dying. Building collapsing. So I think it's important that we have this bill, that we will have a body like the Engineers Registration Board, like the medical profession, how it's regulated, and all this. So it's very, very important. It talks about that there should be a registrar who becomes the chief executive of this board, Mr. Speaker. And this board is supposed to keep, Mr. Speaker, the register of building surveyors registered under the Act. Speaker, even these days, there are people who have degrees, PhDs and masters, and they have never seen the inside of a university. So, Mr. Speaker, that's why I totally agree with CS Matiang'i, that for you to get a degree, for you to pass exams, you must sweat. Yeah, you don't just sit here and you get a law degree or you get an engineering degree. Mr. Speaker, there is something I used to hear when I was growing, that university cut-off points. What happened to that? All of us, when we were going to school, we used to aspire to make sure that we get the cut-off points for university entrance. Now these days, Mr. Speaker, my son gets an A or an A- or a B+, he meets in the university somebody with a D-. Speaker, no, that's not fair. That's why we must regulate, we must have a record of who is a qualified building surveyor. So, Mr. Speaker, I am sure with your guidance, this bill now will await the committee to take it through the public participation and look at it and ultimately bring back to the House a report which will set the motion for the committee of the whole House. I beg to move. I beg to reply.
Very well. Stand down. We cannot put the question for the simple reason that a few members appear to have problems sitting for 2 hours in the chamber. They have left. I don't know why it is that members go to, is it? They like tea too much, is it? But of course, earlier in the morning it was saying that there are very active campaigns for Iyala happening. So maybe members have been invited by the candidates. So, but we'll put off the issue of putting the question to tomorrow. I move to the next order.
Order number 9, the Fiscal Planning Bill, National Assembly Bill number 34 of 2017, second reading.
Leader Majority.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the Fiscal Planning Bill 2017 now be read a second time. Mr. Speaker, this Fiscal Planning Bill 2017 was dealt with by this House and sent to the Senate. And because of the Senate, the 11th Parliament, they could not process this bill. So they went home while holding this bill. So we have republished. And we have republished with the input of the National Assembly so that we don't go back to the same thing. It's a very, very important bill, Mr. Speaker, and it was read here in the House on October the 11th. And this bill, Mr. Speaker, seeks to repeal the Fiscal Planning Act number 6 of 1996. What does it do, Mr. Speaker? This bill provides for the planning, use, regulation, and development of land in Kenya. This is a very, very important bill. And Mr. Speaker, as you said, you don't know where members have gone. But Mr. Speaker, I don't think where the members have gone to the lunch to have tea. And I think you need to help us. The tea and those mandazis are deteriorating. They are not enticing. So I think once we form the committee on welfare, service, and facilities, I think they should deal with the matter. I'm sure the media, will report that Joanna was complaining about tea and mandazi. But Mr. Speaker, I have all the right. Because I am a member of this House, and we want to have tea, but the quality of the service there, the hospitality, is not what a member of Parliament should receive, Mr. Speaker. We can do better. So, Mr. Speaker, this bill is divided into 7 parts and 4 schedules for members to follow. To give a brief background of the bill, Mr. Speaker, the Fiscal Planning Bill was first introduced in the House in August 2015. And this bill was considered by the 11th Parliament and passed on the 16th of December 2015 by the National Assembly, subsequently to the Senate. So they stayed with this bill, Mr. Speaker, for 1.5 years. To Standing Order 141, subsection 4, the National Assembly Standing Orders, there was need for reintroduction, and that's why we have it here today. So the planning, fiscal planning, Mr. Speaker, entails the provisions of spatial framework for the arrangement and organization of socio-economic activities on land both at the national, regional, county level and even at the local village level. That we must have a spatial demarcation of land in terms of its use. And Mr. Speaker, this bill gives effect, in fact, it's a constitutional bill. It gives effect to Article 66, subsection 1 of the Constitution. And it provides that the state may regulate the use of land or any interest in our right over land in the interest of defense, public safety, public order, public morality, public health. So the state has powers on compulsory acquisition if they are going to acquire that land for the purpose of defense, for the purpose of public safety, for the purpose of public order and public morality. And I think, Mr. Speaker, this bill is coming at the right time. The government must seize, based on public safety, the Salga black spot. And we must do something. You know, we must do something, even if it is reintroducing the road that used to pass through the forest. Speaker, so this bill in part 1, it talks about interpretation of the terms used in this bill. It gives the object of the bill. Part 2, Mr. Speaker, talks about the National Fiscal Planning Consultative Forum and the County Fiscal Planning Consultative Forum, as well as the functions of the forums and who are the members. It also provides, provides for the function of the National Land Commission, the functions of the Cabinet Secretary, and the function of the county executive responsible for land use. Mr. Speaker, this bill respects the role of county governments in planning and the development control. Those functions of land have been devolved by the Constitution and have been reserved for the county governments. Speaker, this bill also ensures that the county executive committee members are responsible for the formulation of county and urban development policies. Part 5 of the bill, Mr. Speaker, provides the enforcement aspect of this bill. What are the services of enforcement notice, contents of enforcement notice? It provides for the requirement of the present development application and service requisition notices. Part 6 of the bill, Mr. Speaker, talks about the establishment of the Fiscal Planning Liaison Committee, their composition, their membership, their powers, their functions, and both at the national and the county level. Mr. Speaker, this bill contains 4 schedules. If you look at the back of the bill, it has 4 schedules which deal with the following matters. The first schedule of to this bill provides for the procedure of appointment of members to the national and the county fiscal development forums. The second schedule in this bill, Mr. Speaker, provides for the contents of the national, inter-county, and county fiscal plans. The third schedule to the bill, Mr. Speaker, provides for the contents of local fiscal development plans. And the fourth schedule to this bill, Mr. Speaker, provides for matters which may be dealt with under development. So it's a very small, comprehensive bill. All the amendments, both by the committee and by respective members of the 11th Parliament, when it was at the Committee of the Whole House, have been incorporated in this bill. So it's a very, very rich bill at this stage. It has all the amendments of the various stakeholders, members of Parliament, the Committee of Lands at that time. Finally, Mr. Speaker, the Fiscal Planning Bill 2017 is an improvement of the current Fiscal Planning Act number 6 of 1996, as it recognizes the object of devolution as provided for in Article 174 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, this bill makes provisions for planning, use, regulation, and development of land for the benefit of the people of Kenya, both the current and future. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a bill that is very important to this House. It talks about land use, land development, both at the national and the county level. Land is a very emotive.
We do have the Fiscal Planning Bill coming into the House for debate and enactment so as to bring that article of the Constitution into force. It is very important to note that this bill repeals the old Fiscal Planning Act of 1996, which act to a great extent was urbanized. It actually mostly dealt with urban land and left the rural areas into a haphazard way of planning. This act now brings into force and into execution both the urban areas and the rural areas. It is my sincere hope that upon enactment of this bill into law, we may actually even have agricultural land being planned so that we are back to the old colonial times when even agricultural land used to be planned just like urban lands. It is also important to note that the Act brings together the national government and the county governments so that the two governments work in a consultation through the consultative forum, and the planning that is to take place under the guidance of the national government is coordinated with what the county governments are also planning. In essence, it means the urban areas, which mostly would be under the control of the national government, would also tally with what the rural areas under the county governments are being planned. It is also important to note that it does provide for a way of executing the Act itself through the various functions, through the various organizations which are being formed to bring the Act into force. And these include the national physical development plans, the regional physical development plans, and the county physical development plans, and the special areas plans, which must all be brought together for purposes of ensuring that our country has a planned system of land development. This House will agree with me, Mr. Speaker, sir, that in fact we have left it to the citizens to plan the land for themselves. As a result, we have dotted our country with structures that are not coordinated, structures that are not well planned, and to some extent, we complain that slums are mushrooming, and these are towns that are not planned. Our ambulances, our emergency service vehicles cannot find their ways in these particular unplanned settlements, as a result of which it is a little bit haphazard. And our citizens are not well protected because these services are not accessed when they are most needed. This is the reason why the relevant government organ and ministry have come up with this Act to try and harmonize whatever plans we have to execute in the land. Then, of course, there is the enforcement bit, whereby our citizens will have to apply for licenses and permits so as to build, construct, or develop the land, which I think is very important. This is where which plans are actually under the old Act, but these plans are restricted to urban areas. Even in the rural areas now, we will be required to present our plans so that our developments are actually in consonance with the law and with the plans that have been put in place by the county government and by the national government. And we must emphasize that there is penalty for failure to comply with the Act. Therefore, as we enact this law, we must also inform the citizens that they will be required to make a to ensure that it is followed. There is a follow-up that if you do anything that contravenes this Act, there is a penalty, there is an offense that is prescribed, and therefore you may find yourself in court charged with contravening the Act. This is the right time to have this law enacted. Therefore, it is my humble prayer to the House that this is debated well, it is possibly enacted, and eventually we have a Physical Planning Act 2017, which is going to last for a couple of years, because we must emphasize that development, just like ICT and the other technologies, keeps on changing from time to time. The old Physical Planning Act was enacted in the year 1996, which means it has served for about 21 years. We wish that this Act will also serve for another 20 to 30 years before we come up with different sets of laws to govern development. On those points, I do second that this bill actually is moved. Thank you.
Honourable members, I propose the question is that the Physical Planning Bill, National Assembly Bill number 34 of 2017, be now read a second time. Member for Butula.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this very important bill. Mr. Speaker, this bill has come at the right time when we have a lot of constructions mushrooming in various suburban and local markets. Mr. Speaker, I believe that coming up with any construction which has not been planned for ruins the face of the town. Mr. Speaker, the mushrooming constructions in various urban, suburban, and local markets which have been haphazardly constructed will cease. I hope, Mr. Speaker, that the officers, the planning officers responsible for implementing this act or this bill when it goes through will make sure that any construction that does not appear in the plan is removed. Any old constructions that have created slums in our urban, or upcoming urban areas are removed and the plans are brought up. Mr. Speaker, the county governments are now going to have the power to work together with the Director of Fiscal Planning in ensuring that any upcoming developments in our towns or in our markets are properly planned. Mr. Speaker, this bill is very important and should be supported wholeheartedly by this House to ensure that our towns look like other towns in developed countries. We move out from slums that have created hideouts for criminals in our towns. So I support this bill, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Member for Yembe Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this bill, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand to support this amendment, and as the Lindo majority and the second has put it, this bill stands to cure some of the issues which have been overlooked by builders or people who plan, or those who are charged with the work of seeing how we lay down various structures and even infrastructure and other places in various parts of our country. And more so, because the old bill has been concentrating so much in urban areas, it's a deviation so that at least also the rural areas can be put into the picture and also to get it properly planned, Mr. Speaker. Physical planning, Mr. Speaker, is necessary in any environment, even in our schools, even in the way we plan our towns. the way we plan with the way we plan even where to put the roads and the like, Mr. Speaker. You'll find, Mr. Speaker, there are some institutions which when you try to put a structure, you find them, you misplace so many structures at the end of the day, you waste a lot of space, which could have been used properly, or maybe you put a structure where it does not fit, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have some cases in some of my schools in my constituency whereby we are unable to put up administration blocks because you find that the dining room is just near the gate. You find the toilets at the other corner of the institution, and at the end of the day, you find that the best place you can put an administration block is behind the classrooms or behind the dorms, which is quite a misplacement, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, this bill will at least cure these anomalies, and more so, if there are structures which have been put in the wrong places, they can be demolished, and it may be they are put where at least accessibility and where they can properly fit, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have had cases where fires broken in our slums and in our towns, and there's no way, the fire engine has nowhere to pass through to get to the destination of the fire or where the fire is broken, Mr. Speaker. And you find that people are complaining that the government is not assisting them to at least to address those disasters, but more so, there are the developers and the people who have already put up structures which have blocked the way, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, that is where now the issue of penalties come in, Mr. Speaker, whereby if you put up a structure where it's not supposed to be, you are fined or you are charged, you are surcharged for the same, and the more so that this particular structure is brought down for the purpose of getting that accessibility, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the population is growing day in, day out, and if we don't manage our land properly, if we don't plan for how we
the little land we have, and we find that even within Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, there are some areas that the planning, we have seen even people coming to build hotels in residential areas, people putting up structures that don't match with the planning of the area. We have seen people building bars close to schools and all that, Mr. Speaker. So there's some of these things, when we look at it comprehensively, it will just come down to planning. And when they say when you fail to plan, Mr. Speaker, you are planning to fail. And this is what has happened in this country. We've seen it when disaster occurs, especially in slum areas in Nairobi. People just stand and watch because the distress call, the fire engines and all that, they cannot access some of these areas. And to find some places, Mr. Speaker, there is a limit on how much a land can be demarcated, and we find sometimes people have reduced that to the very minimum, so that it doesn't make any sense that somebody can even construct something in that area. And we have seen that when early this 2000, around 2000, when the NAC government came in power, Mr. Speaker, the Right Honorable Prime Minister Raila Odinga, when he was the Minister for lands, he brought down quite so many structures that now are paving the way for the construction of these bypasses. At that time, I'm sure many of us did not see the sense on what he was doing, but he had looked at the master plan of Nairobi, and he knew that for us to open up Nairobi, we need to construct those roads. And that paved the way for the construction of the bypasses that now have east traffic within the CBD and many other areas of Nairobi. Mr. Speaker, we must comprehensively look at how we deal with land in Kenya, not just in urban areas, but even in the rural areas where most of the land is agricultural. And we find that the families with small pieces of land, they end up, Mr. Speaker, everybody's subdividing
left, right, and center, and then it end up being not of any value to the users. So as we look at this bill, Mr. Speaker, when at a later stage we must now come up, even the National Consultative Forum that has been established, the composition of it, Mr. Speaker, I can see there, it has looked at many other aspects, including, I've seen a member of being nominated by National Council for Persons with Disability, and other professional bodies that have nominated their membership in this forum, Mr. Speaker. And I'm sure this will come up with proper guidance to how we can utilize our land in the country, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for the chance, and I support, Mr. Speaker.
And I think I had the same sentiments where the architects were asking whether the physical planners have the capacity to work alone without being supervised by the architects and that kind of thing. And this afternoon we were treated to a similar debate where I had again some members wondering whether this new profession, which is not new, Mr. Speaker, sir, some of the members seated in this house have gone through that training. So when members stood and started wondering whether these are Form 4 dropouts and such, it tells you on how much we must make sure that we update ourselves with the things that we are debating, because at times you can be accused of many other things. And I say this, Mr. Speaker, sir, because this bill of the physical planning, it's a physical planning bill, is still going further. We first of all made sure that the physical planners, while it's a profession with people, and we have a whole 4-year teaching at the University of Nairobi, and I know in other universities where people live with the degrees, and we have people with the PhDs in this field. And to see that now we are even improving on the Physical Planning Act that was there in 1996, it means that this profession is growing. And it means that also that the fears that were there maybe during those 10th Parliament should be used to help us make sure that we don't become fearful going into the future. When you talk of building surveyors, we are creating opportunities for people to do many other things, and you can't do everything alone. This bill, Mr. Speaker, sir, it's very useful. Today, in our TV stations and most of the vernacular radio stations, you will hardly go for an hour without hearing of a land buying company that has decided to subdivide land, sometimes very, very arable agricultural land, and it is in a short while when you go there, it's a concrete jungle. And without knowing, we are just moving to a situation where we are more interested with the short-term monetary gains and not concerned about the future generations and how it will be like long after we are gone. And this bill addresses those kind of issues. It helps us to get to even control our grid, because if that is not done, then we have would have a problem with the kind of land that we would want to have, or the way we would want to use our land going forward. Land remains and will remain the most economic and the most important economic factor, or one of the key factors in our economic growth. And by and by, we have to make sure that we address to its use. And this bill does exactly that. The fact that, Mr. Speaker, sir, it helps us have institutions at both at the national level and at the local level, and it creates how they are going to work together, linkages, makes it possible for me to urge colleagues to support it and help it become an act as soon as possible. The fact also that it has penalties for those who will flout it just for purposes of having those, for whatever reason, the fact that you will suffer some penalty is also a very useful inclusion in the bill. The colleagues who've just spoken before me have talked about the difficulties that we have in this country, and especially in urban areas, when we have disasters that strike. And because of lack of planning, you can't even rescue lives. Lives are lost just because there wasn't any planning, or even if there was some form of planning, there was no care to ensure that the planning was adhered to, and those who did not adhere to it, who are keen on land development, we now develop land in a known manner. We develop land so that it is useful to us now and also to generations to come. We have bodies that must be consulted, and the persons in those bodies are persons who are qualified, because that is also, you can get it clearly from the bill, so that we don't allow this asset to continue wasting away. The stability of any nation, Mr. Speaker, has a lot to do also with how we use our land. Our land continues being squeezed and reducing because the population is growing. And if we can be able to come up with clear ways of making sure that we get the maximum use of land at a given time, not just for purposes of getting some money out of it, but if it is a question of like we need to have to produce food, let us make sure that that land that was meant for farming is maintained for farming. Those who came to Nairobi, and I see a few members here who came to Nairobi a little bit before others, know that you would drive along Kirereshwa and you find residential units that were bungalows, single dwelling units. Today, you wouldn't note the difference between Kirereshwa and Zimmerman. Not that there is anything wrong with Zimmerman, but it is good to have a town that is zoned, a town that is planned, at somewhere you can see order. But these days there is no order. You can put up anything that you wish. You go into a place and you buy a piece of land, and you are told this is a controlled development where you are supposed to put up a single dwelling house. But within a short time, your neighbor decides to go 7 stories up, the other neighbor goes 7 stories up, and eventually you are literally squeezed out. Like, you are just squeezed out of the area, because that's not what you desired. So the fact to have a planning, an orderly way of using land in our country, and to have a law of this nature helping us remain within the provisions of the Act is a very useful thing, Mr. Speaker, sir. And it is helpful because it also helps in ensuring that the country is secure. Where we cannot control land use, even insecurity comes along with it. And we have to pass this bill as quickly as possible. It's unfortunate that we were, of what the majority leader was informing us, that this bill was done back in 2016 and went and really idled in the Senate. We hope this will not be the case again, because it is important to process these bills and they go out for purposes of helping us and our future generations. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support.
Very well. Let's have the member for Lamu West.
Mr. Speaker, I raise to support this bill of physical planning, more so because after the devolution, many counties, we are seeing towns, and more so in Lamu, where we are expecting, or the national government is putting massive infrastructure projects. So the need for town planning, knowing where to put what, comes very fast, comes fast, and giving county governments, county government the powers to plan and also to work in conjunction with the national government will go long way in solving the challenges that lies ahead. Because you'll see that in towns like Mombasa, Bomboruru, and the others, you wonder, all those structures which are there, the plans were not there. And if we don't enact such laws or such a bill, in the near future, in 20 years, in 10 years to come, we'll see towns like Lamu and any other of that kind. You'll see a similar challenge coming up. So it is timely that this bill goes through. I support it. And also, citing an incident that happened in 2016 and 2015, where the state wanted to put a defense college or a barracks in Lamu for purposes of the security of that area. And it became so difficult because we don't have such laws in our constitution. So this bill is important, and this bill will go further in solving the challenges so that we can also be like other nations in Europe and Asia where they plan their towns early, even way before these towns happen. So I support this bill.
Very well, let's have Honorable Bunyasi, member for Nambale.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to contribute to this bill. I am completely conflicted as to whether it's a good bill or not. I know that when you talk about planning and good planning, it looks like motherhood. Everybody needs to support it. But reading through this bill, first of all, I think it is just, if it was just simple prose, it would be bombastic without conveying the message as clearly as it should. One, I think there needs to be a clear delineation between what the national government would do and what the county governments would do of their own volition. So the county government like Busia will do things differently from Lamu or from Machakos or from Kwale and so on. That nuancing needs to be done. There's no need for the national government or institutions in any way to plan towns away. They have no such business. All that must be local, with local capacity and training. I want to give an example recently where a local school in my constituency in Nambale was going to build a computer lab and a science laboratory. They had drawings. Those had to be approved in Nairobi. And it is taken about 4 months. They're not ready yet, just the approval of those drawings. The principal and the board members have to travel up and down. That should be localized. There's no reason for it to get beyond Busia. And if there are any guidelines, they should remain brief guidelines with the interpretation and the professional work being done at the local agencies. We think of our counties as institutions, as governments, with people with inferior qualification. That's not necessarily the case. We have these big bureaucrats who may be highly qualified in Nairobi who can't service the country from Nairobi. So that distinction here, although I can see a cascading structure, but it's a structure which is not, in a sense, the word devolved. It's more like it is delegated. These ought to be decisions made locally. That's my first concern on it. Secondly, the institutions like the Consultative Forum that's been set up, which has everybody you can think of. It has CSS sitting in, and it runs into I don't know how many people, almost 20-something, nearly 30 people. Those kinds of institutions do not work. And I think that's just a way of getting people to spend a lot of time and sometimes money for those sittings, but certainly a lot of time, slows down decision making. I think that that kind of thing is complicated, is unnecessary. And though this is a planning, a proposed planning law, there will be too much planning and little action on this. This needs the principle of subsidiarity, making decisions at the lowest suitable point ought to have been followed in this regard. You know the maze of getting approvals, even within Nairobi. There's no building in Nairobi that's expected to be built without the approval of the planning office. And what happens? They're still collapsing because there is just too much bureaucracy and not enough decision making. Very slow response. Only when the buildings fall do you see everybody showing up and running around and so on. Why don't we have a system that does not allow this construction to proceed, that would be able to respect it in good time, and we don't wait until we get the casualties that we are getting. Mr. Speaker, sir, I can see a role in which decisions from Nairobi, where Nairobi stands for the national government, where you want to make strategic decisions, for example, on water towers, where these should be and how that should be handled as a national priority and as a national responsibility, where you make a decision in respect of national and international infrastructure, where you want to make decisions, for example, in respect of sensitive areas, environmentally sensitive, like pipelines and so on, things that we're going to get into, make decisions on those. For the rest of it, allow local governments to make them within the volition of their own decisions, no decision that must be checked with Nairobi and so on. I don't think that we have seen either quality of governance or expertise application simply because things are coming from Nairobi. I think there are a whole host of problems. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, my view about this bill, whereas the principle of planning is sound, like motherhood, as I said, the way it's done, in my view, it is a convoluted document that still gives a lot of authority to Nairobi in a devolved system where these things should be done locally. If there is going to be a role for Nairobi, it must be a quality check, perhaps monitoring, I do not know, experience sharing across counties, but not have them have executive roles in things that should be done by others. Mr. Speaker, sir, having said all of that, it's indeed very pathetic the way that markets and towns are mushrooming. And everybody can see that. There are many towns in this country which roads look like what you would find in Lamu. Lamu has the roads it has by virtue of the ancientness of the city, for example, but not because of lack of planning. And it was consistent with the infrastructure and transport arrangements of those days. So you can see it with ponies and that kind of thing. But now you find modern towns growing, even in capital towns of counties and so on, in which you can't move a car through the streets. And in case of emergency vehicles will be unable to reach the people they are supposed to reach. Sewers can't be easily laid because of the lack of geometry that supports sewers, and so on. These are overall principles that can be enforced, that can be drawn, developed, and enforced within the administrative and judicial systems within counties, and that the national government will simply share best experiences and so on. If you put up a building or even a whole maze of buildings, what you do in high rainfall areas is going to be quite different from high temperature, dry areas, and so on. We are not a country that is very good with air conditioning and so on. So you can't have one building that's going to be used all over. So it completely frustrates me when you find that those things still come from Nairobi and nothing new in Nairobi is being done. We've mentioned the role of universities and so on. They have been doing research for a long time. I'm sure they have developed, or they should have developed, arrangements that suit each climate area, that suit there might even be cultural aspects related to it. I was looking, for example, for simple things like designs of sanitary facilities in schools. And you look at the ministry, they just have got basic drawings of rectangular structures. I had to go to AMREF to get something that looked like it's responsive to modern sanitary requirements, and that has a cost implication, cost saving and so on. That did not come from the planners that do these things in a very up-down hierarchical way from Nairobi down to the local areas. For me, I would think this bill needs a serious audit before really it's proposed. Otherwise, we are just dealing with things because they're there, and nobody will bother to read through the thing. But you read through it, and you just find how convoluted it is and how lack of clarity there is in this. What I would like to see clearly is, personally, what I would like to see clearly is that the national government will provide guidelines, that there are clear penalties, not scattered all over, but it should be clear, even in that structure, in the village that's being put up. If you notice areas like where I come from, as you drive along roads, there is what you can call a market every 50 meters. Everybody is building a kiosk or a shop or a pub and so on and so forth. They are waiting someday, I don't know when, for anybody to come and say this ought to be the land use pattern. Or to say the implications of what you are doing are this on health, for example, which is a very important thing, and I mentioned environment. So instead of this whole maze that's being done by technical people, highly qualified as they might be, I think that there ought to be, we need to have laws that are implementable, laws that others can buy in. When they don't buy in, they will not be done. I've seen, for example, at Schedule 2, the outline for what the report might look like in Schedule it's shown in Schedule 2, being done by, an outline for inter-county and county physical development plans. Now, let me compare that very quickly with Schedule 3, which is dealing with matters which may be dealt with in a local physical development plan, national, this is a national one. It says, for example, under population, the other also just says population. This one says, which is much better, population analysis. Population growth, migration, density, and so, I mean, it looks like there is, you can see there's lack of symmetry even in the completeness of the document. So I think the document still requires a lot more work. It may be relevant in terms of a topic.
Your time is over, and you have been heard. That's why you are in the World Bank, you know. Now let's have the member for Honorable Ole Sankok.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I stand to support this bill. It has been overdue. And Honorable Speaker, if you can walk around our urban centers, you will be shocked to find that our road reserves, our riparian areas have disappeared because of shoddy works by physical planners whom we need to control. This bill, despite the fact that it may have some areas that we need to amend, but the bill itself expressively state penalties for physical planners and the channel in which they should adhere to in advising the government, advising the cabinet secretary responsible for land, and so on. So, Mr. Speaker, with time, with our population ever increasing and our land ever shrinking, we may find ourselves in a situation where our land and our farmlands just disappeared, and we may not be able to feed our population. As you are aware, everybody is coming up with a very calculated move of making quick money by subdividing their land. And in this country, they say 1 acre produces 7 plots. That is now the sing-song. And anybody who can measure using a tape measure or even counting footsteps have been taken as physical planners and surveyors, and they have subdivided our farmlands to what they call plots of 1/8, quarter, and at the end of the day, because of the increase in population, you may find that the farms that we used to farm disappearing and becoming small towns and land only for habitation. We may lack farmlands, and if we lack farmlands, then it means that we have to import our food. And from where? And with this control of the genetic modified seeds in our country, then where will we import food from? Will we import from Uganda? It's also facing the same problem. Will we import from Tanzania? It's also facing the same problem. So for me, this bill, Mr. Speaker, is actually, it has come at the right time, that we need to control subdivision of our land. We need people who can advise, professionals who are trained very well, because I have seen in this bill, in part 2, talk of physical planning institutions, so that we have the institutions that will be able to train, and they are also advice, and they will be able to give advice to the cabinet secretary, give advice to whoever that is concerned on physical planning. If we go again to part 4 of development control, especially 50, then you'll find
it can prohibit, that is A, or control the use and development of land and building in the interest of proper and orderly development of its areas. Kenya is no longer orderly because of rogue physical planners and land surveyors. At the moment in Narok, there was a whole road with a whole bridge that was grabbed, and courtesy of land surveyors and physical planners. It disappeared. Last week was when the governor took a bold step, I think because the election are over, and decided to give us a road. Now that road is now there. All of us, residents of Narok, were shocked that there was a road that was totally blocked, that was like a bypass for Narok County. And that is why we have been facing the issue of floods in Narok County because of wrong subdivision. Our riparian land have disappeared in Narok, and it have really caused a lot of problems. And again, we have had conflict of after subdivision of these lands to eighth of an acre to those plots that we are talking about, then we lack access roads, especially when there are emergencies like fires. You find when you are subdividing, you try to squeeze as much as possible the road so that you have many plots, because there is no orderly in planning. Towards the end of your land, somebody else may have decided to plan without considering where your road was. So we have dead ends of roads, we have dead ends of sewage systems, because everybody plan according to how they think fit. We really need to centralize. Unlike the member who was saying that it should actually be devolved, Mr. Speaker, we need to centralize this development so that we know at which order we can be able to control our population. Because from the central area of the central government, then the government will know that we need this farmland. We can irrigate fertile lands which may be a bit dry, so that we can be able to produce food for our population. Honorable Speaker, sir, I do support. Very well, let's have the member for Isiolo North. Proceed. You have the microphone.
Yes.
Proceed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to support this bill. I think as it was put very clearly by the majority leader when he introduced this bill seeks to replace an old Physical Planning Act of 1996. Of course, if we look at what is provided for in that act, we realize that a lot of issues which are covered by the current constitution and other laws like the County Government Act, which was actually legislated after promulgation of our constitution, you realize that there are a lot of issues which need to be considered in the current law. One specific thing is the role of county government in planning process. Of course, in the old act, we had the county councils, which constitutionally had no much powers compared to the current county government. And therefore, if we look at this bill, it has adequate provision for guiding the county government and for also specifying role of the county government, the CEC for planning, under the county government in the planning process. And again, looking at provision of our current constitution and the importance it attaches to participation, this bill, unlike the act which is intending to repeal, actually enhances stakeholders' participation in physical planning. Is concerned about the number of members who are included in the physical planning consultative forums. But then if you have to enhance participation, definitely you will have to provide for as broad stakeholders as possible in the consultation process. I would like specifically to point out some special groups which had minimal involvement or participation in the old act, which under the current, the proposed bill, have been provided opportunity to adequately participate in consultation forums on physical planning. And these are people like representatives of resident associations. We know that most of our urban centers these days have residents associations, and these are taxpayers. They are the ones who, in most of the times, when we have rogue officers who do, violate their professional ethics and they facilitate grabbing of land, residents associations are the first people to actually shout and make sure that malpractices are contained. Another special group, which again has been given space to be part of the consultation process, are people who are living with disabilities. And we know that we need, as a country, and it's a requirement also under our constitution, to ensure that the special interests of people who live with disabilities are adequately catered for, and so on and so forth. And of course, the Council of Governors. And again, this particular bill, which I support, also makes provision for neighboring counties, if they feel that they need to have a joint regional plan, it allows them to do that kind of planning. And especially those counties which have some conflict around where the boundary passes and so on and so forth, I'm sure this kind of planning, inter-county planning, which is provided for under Section 25, will actually help us to address land-based conflicts, so that the two counties can sit together, they can decide the best use to which probably the areas under contention should be put to, and they can come up with a plan which then they can jointly implement. The bill also encourages integration of different types of plans. We know that because the land is shrinking, we need to do things which probably under the old act was not allowed. Things like, for example, urban agriculture, so that as we do physical planning, then also we integrate it, it allows or it encourages its integration of different types of plans, the physical plan, the sector plans, and so on and so forth. And again, in as much as the County Government Act requires our counties, for example, to do spatial planning, one of the hurdles which has stopped our county government.
Question, Mr. Speaker, although this doesn't need a second, my colleague, Mr. Kimani, was with me. If he could be given the first priority to be able to speak on this.
That is none of your business, Honorable Member for Kwanza. You might actually spoil the chance of him getting, and he's actually top on the list, because it's only from one end that this House runs, and that is where I'm sitting. So you have finalized your contribution. Obviously, I believe
Well, member for Molo. Members, it's just my desire to remind you that on this particular one, you have 5 minutes each, 5 minutes to contribute. I will now give this opportunity to the Honorable Deputy Speaker who wishes to have a say on this.
Yes, I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I contribute to this particular motion with a heavy heart, very heavy heart. As a Kenyan and as also member of Parliament for Kuresoi North, which most of these accidents that we've witnessed in the last few days have occurred. The accident which occurred, which killed 7 artists, happened in my constituency at a place near a center called Kamara. Previously, in that particular spot, we had the tanker explosion. Quite a number of my constituents were affected. Generally, and the issue of the last one, which happened in Molo and Salga, are in the neighboring constituencies, Molo constituency and Rongai constituency. And that particular stretch of road has been a big issue for the last many years. It has been made a black spot, but still nothing much has happened to improve the situation in it. And at this particular time, Mr. Speaker, it's not that opportunity to lament and get involved in blame games and the rest. It is a situation whereby we need to look for solutions. Mr. Speaker, one particular solution that I want to offer myself. One, I had my good friend talk about a place between Molo and Mau Summit. Most of it will be in my constituency. We would be very happy if that particular area is given priority, because there are several vasts of land, both that are private, to Tanzania, to Uganda, maybe sometimes to South Sudan, and because the people are chasing to make sure that they make sufficient profits, some of them are paying loans and so forth, we really need to start thinking about compulsorily asking these particular owners of trucks to employ more than one driver. That can be done and made sure that at least a driver drives for a particular number of hours. Those are things that can be done. Mr. Speaker, also we should think of bringing back the roads which we have left for quite some time. The stretch between a place called Kivunja, just after the Molo Junction, actually that's where the Molo Junction is, there has been a route which was used previously. It is the old route to Nairobi. We could divert like it has been done in Maimahiu, and has really saved quite a lot of lives being lost in the stretch that comes to Nairobi. So, Mr. Speaker, those are the kind of things that we should look at, and we should look at urgently. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, we should look at setting up bumps and rumble strips. In a particular place very close to where these accidents happened, in Total, there has been quite a lot of accidents. Actually, pedestrians, we have lost quite a lot of pedestrians along that area, near a place called Jogo. And we have made requests that bumps be erected, but that has not been done. I think if it were done, it would also go a long way in saving lives. So, Mr. Speaker, I think these are things that should be done very quickly, because losing lives and limb, Mr. Speaker, is something that is very costly to this nation. So I take this opportunity to again send my condolences and hope that the government will move with speed to work out that situation so that we do not have any more lives being lost. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Well, the Honorable Amalwa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first and foremost, I want to thank Honorable Ferdinand Wanyonyi for bringing up this adjournment motion. And Mr. Speaker, as it's stipulated under Article 95, Sub-Article 2 of the Constitution, this Parliament deliberates and debates on issues of concern to the people. Mr. Speaker, at a time like this,
the time of the festive season, we are losing so many Kenyans because of careless driving. Mr. Speaker, before I continue, I want to send the message of condolences to the friends and relatives who have lost their loved ones through this kind of accident, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Parliament cannot be having motions of adjournment in perpetual. We must get a solution because people are dying, Mr. Speaker. I'll humbly request that we form maybe a committee of inquiry to look into this matter. I remember when I was still a small boy, we used to hear of Sachangwan something fire. We've had so many accidents. We've lost a lot of lives between Salga and Sachangwan, Mr. Speaker. For how long are we going to debate this? We should have a committee of inquiry into this and we move quickly into implementation. Mr. Speaker, we are losing lives. If it's the issue of widening the lanes, so be it, Mr. Speaker. If it's the issue of a flyover, so be it, Mr. Speaker. If it's the issue of diversion, so be it, Mr. Speaker. And we are requesting this House to move with speed, to have the Committee on Transport, so that it can look into this matter and we have clear ways of resolving this. Mr. Speaker, it's not just along Sachangwan, Salga. We also lost lives, Mr. Speaker, in Bungoma. We've had recently, we've lost also the life of the governor of Nyeri. And nothing has been done, Mr. Speaker. Where is the traffic police? Where is the NTSA, Mr. Speaker? We need to know what is the cause of all this. We are losing lives, we are losing young Kenyans, we are losing the people who are the leaders of tomorrow, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, about the issue of the trucks. The government should move with speed, maybe, Mr. Speaker, to have the railway line so that we minimize the number of trucks on these roads. Because a lot of accidents are caused by the trucks, Mr. Speaker. They are driving long distances and you random checks, particularly on those trucks, Mr. Speaker. Some of them are very sleepy. They are driving, they are dozing off, Mr. Speaker. And this has been mainly the cause of these accidents, particularly the trucks. They drive for long distances. Some of them are getting the goods from Mombasa. Maybe they are taking them across the country. And that's why these long distances, they must do road checks and ensure if a truck is there, there must be co-drivers, maybe 2 or 3, and give a provision. Maybe someone, as you're driving, another person sleeps. These checks must be put in place to ensure that these cases are minimized. Mr. Speaker, on roadworthy vehicles, there must be random checks. At Christmas time like this, Mr. Speaker, everybody wants to put his car on the road, even if the car is unroadworthy, when you're going home for Christmas. They must be checked when the service was done, and this is to do also with corruption. The police officers are busy on these roads, but they're acquiring bribes instead of implementing what the rules are talking about. So these lives are being lost, Mr. Speaker, because of poor enforcement and because of the corruption that the traffic police, most police who are rich, Mr. Speaker, are traffic police officers. We've seen these incidents happening. So in terms of enforcement, even the ethics and corruption must be able to move in at such a time when they're trying to compromise the quality of inspections or maybe the type of vehicles. If a car is unroadworthy, it should not be allowed to be on the road, Mr. Speaker. It is very, very unfortunate, and this is the Jubilee government.
The Honorable Amalu, it's just 5 minutes on this particular one. We shall have the member for Nakuru, the Honorable Lisa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this opportunity to speak on the same thing and the same problem that we are facing as Nakuru County. And first, Mr. Speaker, sir, let me give out my message of condolences to the families of those who lost their lives through this tragic accidents along this road. Mr. Speaker, sir, about a month ago, we lost potential farmers, potential young businessmen along this road. About 10 days, we lost the 7 artists along this road. Yesterday, we lost a lot of people. Mr. Speaker, sir, as it has been said by Honorable Wamalwa, that we really need to have a committee of inquiry to inquire to each and every kind of accident in this country. Sir, is to advise the government on what to do on certain issues, especially on issues of road safety. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is until we have this kind of research or investigation about the accident, especially those that is happening along this stretch of Salga, of Sachangwan, or of Kamara, Salga. Mr. Speaker, sir, we need to know the mandate of NTSA. What is their mandate? We all know that their mandate is to investigate about the road safety and to advise the government on what to do. Mr. Speaker, sir, if it is a matter of dual garage, really let be it. If it is a matter of diversion, if it is a matter of maybe doing another road for the long trucks, let it be it. If it is through investigation, we get to know maybe the drivers are under pressure of certain kind. We need some recommendation. And I call upon the relevant ministry to do something about this. We are not going to keep quiet when we are losing a lot of people. We are suffering as a country. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, sir, we really expect the relevant committee of this House and the relevant ministry to do something about this issue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Very well. We shall have the Honorable Bunyasi from Nambale. I know the Honorable Oundo is first on the list, but he also comes from Busian because of seniority. I will allow the Honorable...
Get older quickly.
I will allow the Honorable Bunyasi to go before you, to have a go at it before you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, and I accept that fully. I know that Mheshimiwa Oundo will one day get to this level of seniority by age, so he's well along the way, and I'll give way for him then. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to thank Mheshimiwa Wanyonyi for bringing up this motion for discussion. This sector of the road is extremely crucial. It is the only link that we really have between the central part of the country, Nairobi, and the rest of it, and the western parts of Kenya, Rift Valley, Lower Nyanza, and western, and so on. And for a long time, there have been accidents in this section. And each time we make exhortations of the type we are doing, and nothing really happens. I know that some years back there was some talk about putting a modern trauma center, trauma hospital in Nakuru, which I thought was a wonderful idea. I'm not up to date as for whether it was done or not. If not, that's one aspect of it. Not that we should wait until it gets to that level, but when it does, even that can help save lives. But we need a comprehensive solution to this. First, we have NTSA. The suggestion of an inquiry by Mheshimiwa Wamalwa is a sound one. In these specific accidents, did the NTSA have, was it part of the problem? Was it because of the way the boisterous sort of Western cowboy style they do? You chase vehicles. Why don't you just call ahead and have the vehicle stopped by the next police post? I think we do need to get clarity to those kinds of things too. It just can't be the drivers. It can't be that it's, in all of these cases, it's either careless or sleepy drivers. There are also accidents by small vehicles which will not have driven much. Even the issue of resting, respectable as it sounds, these people have just come from Nakuru, where they would have probably rested. Perhaps those coming from the lower side, they didn't rest at total, may need a rest there. But of course, we should look at all these options. Changing the soft side, like insisting on multiple drivers in a verifiable way, is also sound. But I think the infrastructure solutions are also important. Deputy Speaker Shiboy did mention this, but we do need to get a dual carriageway in the beginning, just affecting the critical areas. Let us not say that once we want to do a carriageway, let's now start in Rironi and run it all the way to Total. That's just trying to get
a big picture to impress, but the solution, the problem lies in this section. Let us do something in this section. And I think that what was suggested by Mheshimiwa Chiboy, the Deputy Speaker, was a sound one. Just take the critical sections and hive out land and create, if you want to do a resting place, of course, do that too. But create a dual carriageway at the minimum, straighten out the road a bit more, improved lighting that the member for MP for Molo mentioned earlier on is also part of that solution. And of course, modern enforcement, not cowboy style on the road. The fact that you have the capacity to stop vehicles and find them does not give you a cowboy status. You just need to be civilized, modern, and do things in a way that people know that the punishment is strong if you do not obey the law in that section. I think it should be taken with great urgency so that this can be done. We in Western are losing a lot of people in this sector. I'm sure the people in the area, local people in the area too, are also losing people. So this is a matter that is truly of national concern, and I hope that we can follow up with the suggestion to have the Transport Committee or some other committee do this inquiry with speed and urgency. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Well, the Honorable Lomenan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. First and foremost, I want to send my message of condolences on behalf of people of Turkana South for the loved ones who have lost lives in specific roads. I recently, Honorable Speaker, we lost almost 23 people in Ginyang Kapedo Road. And almost all these people are my relatives, Honorable Speaker. So I am really affected with this issue of road accident. I support my colleague who has brought this adjournment motion. And my plea goes actually to the President of this nation, Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta, as he prepares to appoint CSS. He is aware of this issue of rampant road accidents. And I think my plea to him, let him appoint someone who is very committal, someone who can play the role that was played by the late Michuki. What the late Michuki did, Honorable Speaker, every Kenyan knows. During this time, there was minimum road accidents in this nation. Why? It is because of strict law enforcement on roads. If we enforce law, Honorable Speaker, we will minimize these menaces, these accidents. For example, you will find corruption on roads. If you will not have law, corruption will continue. Even someone who has then done a mistake on the road, Honorable Speaker, with corruption, it is usual thing. Honorable Speaker, the issue of overloading, the issue of overspeeding, that one concerns actual law. If we not have people who can enforce strict law, that behavior, that misbehaving will continue, Honorable Speaker. So if you will have a responsible committee on transport and a responsible CS of transport, Honorable Speaker, I assure this accident will be mitigated, this accident will be minimized. Second, Honorable Speaker, it's also good to ensure our roads are functional. Our roads are in good condition. You remember, Honorable Speaker, what happened in Kapedo? It's because of two things, Honorable Speaker. One, poor road. The condition of the road from Ginyang to Kapedo to Lokori is very poor. Secondly, there are not enough vehicles. There is insecurity there, Honorable Speaker. So what happened, you will find it's only one vehicle. And this vehicle, everybody will want to, it's a security vehicle because public vehicles cannot actually be used. So for us also to minimize, we have to ensure we have our citizens access to more roads. And the roads that are so busy like this one of Nakuru, going to Eldoret, going to Lodwar, we make sure the conditions of such roads are very proper, are in order. And Honorable Speaker, even the obvious, you see when people are traveling in a vehicle, It combines categories of people. Why do we allow, Honorable Speaker, just a simple driver who is drunk with a changa of 10 shillings, killing 50 people, killing 100 people, who is just taking a alcohol of 10 shillings, and then you endanger the lives of people?
Mr. Speaker, the signage is very, very important. It warns the drivers, it gives the driver information, it allows the driver to be able to control the speed or even know that the area is approaching has got a particular feature that is being, or a speed limit. Mr. Speaker, these are some of the things that we do not observe on our roads. You can run all the way from Nakuru to Eldoret and you see very few signage on our roads. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the road unworthiness of the vehicles. We must always examine the inspection unit of our transport, Mr. Speaker. They should make sure they do inspection of these vehicles regularly, especially these long traffic vehicles, Mr. Speaker, that they are properly in mechanical sound, Mr. Speaker, before they're on the road. Mr. Speaker, the other element that we must also be checking, especially for this NTSA, I think when they came, they are doing very well, Mr. Speaker, but they have also developed the bad manners of the police, whereby they just also jump on the road and start chasing vehicles and doing all manner of things that also are accelerating to this accident, Mr. Speaker. One of the tragedy that happened over these few days, Mr. Speaker, is the loss of 9 members of one family in Bungoma, Mr. Speaker. One of those is a student, a Form 3 student at Parklands area girls, which is a school in my constituency. And I would like to send my sincere condolences to the families of those who have lost their loved ones. And Mr. Speaker, we must also look at the issue of implementation, because we feel that we have very good pieces of legislation, Mr. Speaker, but implementation is one thing. We need to look at it, how to deal with it, so that we make sure that those who are concerned with implementation, Mr. Speaker, they do their work properly. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, there's another element that we must also try. It might not look very clear, but Mr. Speaker, people must have their eyes checked every now and then. This is one of the causes of accidents, because sometimes they don't see properly and is there on the road driving. So we need that it should be a mandatory when you are going for a drive test or for license renewal. It should be a mandatory eye check, so that we know that you have a clear vision when you're on the road, so that you don't underestimate some distances or some objects on the road, and then it just happens. Then, Mr. Speaker, also sometimes we erect pumps, and you find those pumps are put in places and there's nothing to show that those pumps are erected there. So if you're driving that road and you have never driven on the road, you'll find yourself, it can even cause an accident because you don't see anything to warn you that there are speed barriers ahead of you. So, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to condole with the families, and also as a country, we need to do better than this, and we need to improve on how we construct our roads and erect signage at every vantage of our roads, so that drivers can be informed properly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Mandera West.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I sincerely thank Mr. Wanyonyi for having moved this motion. I think it is very timely indeed. Since long ago, when Egerton was Egerton College and I was a student there, I used to hear about these accidents in those areas up to including yesterday. What are we doing about it? We need not to talk and talk and talk and do nothing. What we need to do is first and foremost to find out the root cause of that particular accident in that particular area. Why that area? Why all the time? Why these big disasters in that particular area? Even recently, I think the religious leaders went there to do cleansing. Maybe it was not accepted. They might need to repeat it, maybe. And many things. So the first thing I recommend here is, can people in the transport department, very technically competent engineers, first and foremost, find out the root cause of that accident in that particular area. Once the root cause is identified, then can very quick actions be taken in order to solve that issue. Be it, let's say, putting very big pumps so that vehicles can slow down from very far up to that area and pass the area, or be it having other roads like what has just been talked about, the Maimahi Road and the former Naivasha Road, that since, the lorries were told to take that route and the other small cars were told to take the other route, then road accidents have drastically reduced in those areas. Be it coming up with a dual carriage so that if an accident happens and there are two lanes, vehicles coming and those going are very close to one another, the impact becomes larger. Then when you have only dual carriage or one route taking that direction and the other one taking, then I think even the accident will not end up in involving 13, 15, 20 vehicles. Whatever action that need to be taken must come from having identified the root cause of that area. The root cause. We know very well that in Kenya, we have very rogue driving habits. Even here in Nairobi. The way a matatu came in front of me yesterday evening, I actually got shocked. I was holding my breath for quite some time because it was jammed, there was no space. All of a sudden, I hear, and then it has given itself some space somewhere. I even wondered how it got a space. This is a very rogue driving habit, which the late Honorable Muchuki really did something about it. Yeah, in Nairobi. And anywhere else, even in my place, where there are no roads. Where there are no roads. Where you used in the morning, if you come back in the evening, that road is already gone, then you go and look for another one. Every vehicle in my area has got a panga, so that you can cut trees and have a new road whenever it is necessary. So what we need to do here is these people call the traffic police. Actually, a lot of the times, traffic police are the cause of accidents. To make the matter worse, we brought something called NTSA, which is becoming worse than the traffic police. It's like adding a problem on another problem. What we need is maybe for the traffic police to be disciplined, take necessary actions, and act on things very quickly, urgently, and areas such as Salga area and the other names, we have to take very serious attention. And let's stop too much talks and do actions. Let's take actions. Let's identify the root cause. Let's take actions. Thank you so much.
Angatria Savula, the member for Lugari.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to contribute to the adjournment motion regarding the state of the nation concerning the traffic road accidents. Mr. Speaker, I squarely blame the Kenya National Highway Authority and the National Transport Safety Authority because of the following reasons. The design work of a road, giving example of my constituency, a place called Chimoi Bridge. The road has been designed to have 4 lanes. But when you approach Chimoi Bridge, the road has been designed to have 2 lanes. But when you approach Chimoi Bridge, the road has been designed to have 4 lanes. But when you approach Chimoi Bridge, the road has been designed to have 4 lanes. But when you approach Chimoi Bridge, the road has been designed to have 2 lanes. But when you approach Chimoi Bridge, the road has been designed to have 4 lanes. But when you approach Chimoi Bridge, the road has been designed to have 2 lanes. But when you approach Chimoi Bridge, the road has been designed to have 4 lanes. But when you approach Chimoi Bridge, the road has been designed to have 2 lanes. But when you approach Chimoi Bridge, the road has been designed to have 4 lanes. But when you approach Chimoi Bridge, the road has been designed to have 2 lanes. But when you approach Chimoi Bridge, the road has been designed to have 4 lanes. But when the lanes collapses to 2 lanes at the bridge. What happens if you meet a truck driver who is dangerously driving at that bridge? Definitely, you will have or you cause accident at that particular place. 3 weeks ago, we had an accident at that place, and on several occasions, several people have been killed at Chimoy Bridge. So we are asking the Kenya National Highway Authority to be serious in their work when they do the road designs, ensure that you open up at the bridge so that you allow enough room for both vehicles to pass without affecting each other. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, these accidents are also caused by lack of adherence to regulations. I remember the 11th Parliament passed a regulations concerning traffic movement. There should be no movement of trucks between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. You drive, like recently I was going to the village, you drive along the Nairobi-Eldoret highway, you will find a traffic jam between Naivasha and Nakuru being caused by heavy traffic movement of truck along that road. And yet we have a regulation that was passed by this House that there should be no movement of truck between 6 p.m. and 6 in the morning. What happened? Secondly, Mr. Speaker, in the same vein, we have the same regulation that bars tractors transporting cane in sugarcane growing areas like Bungoma, Mumias, Kakamega, Chemelil, Moroni, Vihiga areas, Busia. You know, these trucks transport cane at night. The visibility first is very poor. Secondly, they don't have reflectors. You can easily run with a tractor at night. Then there's a regulation that is supposed to be implemented, enforced by NTSA and the traffic police. But what happens in this country? We are more advanced in corruption than any other African country. We don't implement our policies, but we go for the kickbacks. In Nairobi here, I happen to be taking
Nakuru County, where I come from, we are mourning. We have lost over 40 lives within less than 30 days. Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, the matter raised by our colleague, honorable member, it is now a serious matter of concern in this country today. Mr. Speaker, sir, the place called Sachangwan and the Salga areas is where most of my people from Joro constituency go looking for their daily breads. Mr. Speaker, sir, the issue of accident must be taken and be handled with seriousness this round. Mr. Speaker, sir, what we need our country right now, we need serious implementation on every matter which can make us to prevent accident. We need clear markings on roads. We need many or the appropriate bulbs here and there so that we can prevent such accident. Mr. Speaker, sir, I would also propose the drivers who go long journeys, we must have not only one driver, we need at least more than 2 drivers, because we understand long distances make most of our drivers get sleep and we encounter such serious matters. Mr. Speaker, sir, I think this is the highest time when we thought of how to increase roads to ease some jams and even accident. Like within Nakuru County, the road which passes through Salga, it is the one which goes to Eldoret, it comes back to Kericho and Bomet. In the future, I'll be requesting our government to check how that road we can have another alternative road, like Soilo, through Joro, through Molo, to Kericho and Bomet. I think that will be easing the population of roads. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is also another high time. The drivers in this country are clearly known if they are qualified, because sometimes we have some organizations who are in a hurry to have drivers, and to some extent they hire drivers who are not qualified. Kindly, Mr. Speaker, sir, we are requesting the committee for the transport to start working very quickly so that they start with the issues of the priorities, the serious roads which have caused a lot of damage, a lot of pain in this country. And as I finish, Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to give a message of condolences to my country, to my Nakuru County, which we have lost a lot of lives within Sachangwan and Salga. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir.
The Honorable Undo. Honorable Kelo, I've seen you. You don't need to carry your hand. We'll see what to do. You've been here.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I lost my chance to Honorable Bunyasi. Thanks for being kind enough to remember that I'm still in the chambers. Mr. Speaker, sir, I stand here to contribute to this motion. I stand here to contribute being one of the person who has lost a member of my constituents in the pile-up that happened yesterday, Mwalimu Rajuai. I condole with the family. Mr. Speaker, sir, the last few years, I think early this year, I lost again a member of the constituency, more or less in the same area. It is us people from Western Kenya who probably suffer most in the accidents at Chashangwan. And probably, Mr. Speaker, sir, when you look at the trend of accidents, there seems to be an emerging trend. And this emerging trend needs to be investigated thoroughly, needs to be researched to ascertain exactly what is the problem. For as long as I can remember, there have been accidents in Salga, Sachangwan, and the areas between Nakuru all the way to Total. There must be a problem. NTCA has come, it has not helped anything. Kenya has come, it has not helped anything. The police department, the traffic police department has been beefed up, nothing has happened. It is time, as my colleagues have said, to really relook at the management of transport in this country, to leave it to the people who understand the pain of accidents. We only remember those who have lost their lives, but we quickly forget those who have been maimed, those who have been injured, who live with the scars all their lives. Those who are confined to wheelchairs, those who are confined to spinal hospitals for the rest of their life. The burden they impose on their families is untold suffering. It is time, Mr. Speaker, sir, the ministry in charge, the CEC in charge, and all the organs in charge of transport in this country woke up from their slumber and took their roles seriously. Or otherwise then, there is no need to continuously pump funds into these bodies, yet they're doing nothing to prevent or minimize traffic accidents in this country. As Honorable Savula have said, NTSA seems to revel in arresting drunkards, bringing news people, bringing live TV. They feel happy when they arrest honorable members, senior members in society, for basically taking a drink in the neighborhoods. They should concentrate on areas that cause the largest number of accidents. Statistics are there that out of 100 deaths, traffic deaths in this country, probably as jokes normally have it in social media, only probably 20% are associated with drunk driving. It would seem the biggest source of accidents in this country lies elsewhere. They need to look at issues in a more critical manner and literally address the cause of the accidents. Mr. Speaker, sir, obviously, our courts have also been a letdown. They have generally treated those who cause death by driving as if it's reckless driving. A death, is literally murder. We need to look at our laws clearly and decide under what provision of the law we can charge traffic offenders. To Kenha, please mark the roads. Design roads that can prevent deaths. Sachangwan Road has killed very many people over the years. It's no longer a problem of drivers. It's no longer a problem of faulty vehicles. It is time we look at the design of the road to ensure it's designed in such a way we prevent or minimize accidents. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to support and I send my condolences to all who have lost lives in these accidents. Thank you.
Very well. And because Salga is in Rongai, where the Honorable Raymond is the Member of Parliament, I would like to give him this opportunity now. Yes, that is why I've said it is because the accident, the very purpose for which this adjournment motion we are debating is in his constituency. Then we shall have the Honorable Koi Waluke, who has been sitting here next.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. Thank you very much. And Mr. Speaker, Salga Mausamit Road has claimed so many lives. It has claimed so many lives that it has reached a point where we have forgotten the number of people who have died on this road. Mr. Speaker, it is time the government walked the talk. In 2009, Mr. Speaker, there was a an accident at Sachangwan. And at Sachangwan, the accident involved a fuel tanker where hundreds of people were killed. President Mwai Kibaki and many national leaders attended the funeral of those that were affected. And it was here, Mr. Speaker, I believe that would have been 9 years ago, that they promised to put up a trauma hospital at Salga Trading Center. But 9 years later, Mr. Speaker, this has not happened. The trauma hospital, most of the deaths that occur because of these accidents is because of the long distances that the affected have to be taken. They have to be taken to PGH Hospital at Nakuru, which is over 30 kilometers away. And it is in that process of transporting them to Nakuru that they die. And even at arriving at Nakuru, Mr. Speaker, the facilities at that hospital, and I am sad, I read in the Nation today they called it a level 6 hospital. It is not a level 6 hospital. They do not have medicines, they do not have the facilities to be able to treat those affected by these accidents. It is time, like I had said, that the government really walked this talk. It has been a long time. Mr. Speaker, when the president proposed that a hospital should be put at Salga, CDF Committee of Rongai donated 5 acres for the establishment of this hospital. But to this date, nothing has happened. 2013, Mr. Speaker, I, as the Member of Parliament for Rongai, visited the Ministry of Health. Then the PS was Dr. Kasachon, and she promised that there was progress in establishing this hospital. A donor, a fund partner had been located in the United Arab Emirates, and they were at work in trying to build this hospital. But other members to contribute. Is this hospital, Mr. Speaker, must be built. Between Sachangwan and Mau Summit, there must be over 200 policemen on this road. There must be so many cars belonging to the National Transport Safety Agency. But I think they even aggravate the problem. These two centers and they're supposed to maintain order on the roads, they're supposed to prevent and lessen, mitigate these issues of accidents. But they have become a source of accidents. These are two centers of corruption. Everybody knows that. Why they should have even been, they should not be there. But we would like to commend the government And this time we hope that it will happen, that they are trying to build a dual carriageway from Ngata to Mau Summit. And we pray that that is done, and I plead that the trauma hospital is established, Mr. Speaker. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I thank you for that opportunity. Thank you.
Family that lost their loved ones. And it is true, Mr. Speaker, that all of us are talking about this water accident that happened, and we have lost very many people in this country, Mr. Speaker. And me, as a person, as a member of parliament from Sirisia, Mr. Speaker, I blame two institutions. One is the police, because I've also witnessed as a member of parliament that most of their time, Mr. Speaker, they don't do their work properly. You can see a policeman taking money from the lorry, from the truck driver. And that means, Mr. Speaker, that they are corrupt and they are not working. We have lost, in every year, Mr. Speaker, we lose at least 4,000 people, like this time of Christmas, Mr. Speaker. And it is now the highest time that this House, Mr. Speaker, when we talk, we speak on the floor of the House like this, Mr. Speaker, we need to act. As the Speaker of this House, Mr. Speaker, we have not seen implementation of motions or bills. We can't just discuss here and then it will just keep quiet. You don't see any implementation. Although our work is here to represent our people, but most of our talks, Mr. Speaker, has not been implemented. The NTSC, Mr. Speaker, even as we speak on TV when we saw the accident, Mr. Speaker, it is that one officer of the NTSA was chasing the truck because he wanted money. And most of our drivers, Mr. Speaker, truck drivers, they drive, some drive this when they are tired, and then they hand their trucks to their conductors, or I don't know how we call them, another. So they fail, Mr. Speaker, because of long distance. Somebody has driven the truck from Mombasa to Rwanda without resting, Mr. Speaker. And it is a failure of the police to investigate when they take their licenses. Some, they even don't have licenses. They just drive these trucks, Mr. Speaker. This week alone, we have lost about 50 people in 24 hours, which is very bad. These people are going, maybe some are going to Christmas in their homes. Like those who died in Bungoma, they had come to, they had gone to visit their relatives, and one family lost 9 people. It was a pity to that man when he was explaining on TV that he lost his wife, he lost his brother, he lost his brother's wife, he lost his son, he lost the family. So, Mr. Speaker, it is so painful. And another problem, Mr. Speaker, I noticed is that the government, and this is either Kera, and they have failed because they are old roads. In this country, I think we are careless, Mr. Speaker, because we can, when we build a new road, the old road will just be left that way. Because I've seen it, like we are talking about Mau Summit, Molo. There is a tarmac road, that the old tarmac road, which is there. And when they build this new one, they left the old one. And that is a waste of money. I only saw on this weekend that Athi River is when they are reviving it. The other old bridge is now, or the other road is now, the old road is being now recarpeted or putting new tarmac. I think to save money for this country, Mr. Speaker, the government also need to check on something like that, to do it as a toll carriage. Like we need a toll carriage all the way from Mombasa to
Honorable Luke, are you done? I'll give you 1 minute to just wind down. 1 minute.
Oh. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for adding me a minute. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me a minute. I was saying, Mr. Speaker, that we need a toll carriage all the way from Mombasa to Malaba to save lives of our people. And again, let me take this opportunity to thank the Honorable Member Wanyonyi to have brought this motion to the House, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, let it be implemented. As members of this House, Mr. Speaker, we should not just talk and the public is not seeing the fruits that members of Parliament are passing motions and bills and they are not being implemented. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. The Honorable Okello.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Firstly, allow me to extend my deep condolences, and I am in prayers with the families who've been bereaved. Salga has become a common phenomenon when you talk about accidents in Kenya. And I think it is high time we did put real strategies that will combat this once and for all. As my colleagues had indicated and would want to put a lot of emphasis on that, right from Molo Junction to Salga, there used to be a diversion, which can as well be used by heavy trucks to try to avoid these perennial accidents that have claimed lots of lives in that area. Now, Article 26 of the Kenya's Constitution talks in, and very couched in mandatory terms, that every person has the right to life. And everything begins there and actually ends there. So we must do everything within our powers to safeguard the lives and the life of every single Kenyan. We must make sure that each truck, particularly those plying longer distances, must have 2 drivers, each working interchangeably, so that we address issues of fatigue that have claimed lives of so many. No, life is sacrosanct. There is sanctity of life that is put and must be respected and must be protected. We've lost over 100 lives the last few days as a result of accidents, and therefore something must be done. And based on sanctity of life, lives lost through the, we have also, well, at this point, allow me to digress a bit, but still on the same subject, that even as we address issues of life, we must also take cognizance of the fact that the police have also contributed quite immensely towards this. Not just because they have exhibited ineptitude in delivering services on our roads, but since August the 8th, we have lost over 200 lives through the barrel of the gun. So even as we complain about accidents on our roads, we must also handle the fundamental issue of police meting brutality on very yes, we will make necessary noises about addressing issues on the roads, together with those that have affected You know, a colleague of mine did indicate and talked about the tractors that ferry sugarcane. And at night, you will realize, Mr. Speaker, that they have no lights and they have no reflectors. And if you were perhaps driving behind them, you would only realize that they will be the brake to your car. And that has claimed lots and lots of lives in the recent past. So, Mr. Speaker, I would want to once again express my very deep condolences. But I know going forward, we may also need to get a motion such as this to talk about police brutality within the Republic of Kenya. Because life once lost will never be reclaimed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. The Honorable Murdo Kipkosgei, member for Keio North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to put my voice on this very important motion of concern to many Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, road deaths in this country is actually reaching epidemic proportions. And if we go on the way it is, if it goes on the way it is, Mr. Speaker, it will soon overtake common diseases which are the main killers, such as malaria. So we must ask ourselves, Mr. Speaker, what is the cause? What has caused this upsurge in road deaths in this country? Mr. Speaker, according to me, one of the main causes is actually indiscipline of the drivers, of the road users in this country. They overspeed. And I remember, Mr. Speaker, on Monday when I was coming to Nairobi from Eldoret, my car was driving at 100 kilometers, and there was this huge lorry which was in front of me. I was driving at 100 kilometers, but I could not overtake this lorry, this huge lorry, which means actually it was driving at 100 kilometers plus. And such lorries actually are the ones which are likely to cause accidents. We have also the question of careless drivers, careless overtaking. That is how we get head-on collisions. Drunk driving also is part of it, although, of course, once somebody has given a figure of 20%, of course, but definitely it contributes to these accidents in this country. We've talked of fatigue of the drivers. And Mr. Speaker, can you imagine somebody driving a lorry that's 40 ton or 50 ton from Mombasa to Kigali? He has driven 12 hours or even 18 hours from Mombasa to Nairobi. He's still to drive because he's told he must deliver on such a particular time, particular date in Kigali. So he drives while he's exhausted, and definitely that is a recipe for accident. We have also public transport drivers. Imagine, Mr. Speaker, and I know this happens. A driver is driving from Kitale to Nairobi and is expected to be back in Kitale the same day. That driver has driven from 6 a.m., 6 hours he arrives in Nairobi. He takes another 6 hours possibly to load the vehicle, to put in passengers, and he has to drive back again. That means he has driven from 6 a.m. and he has to drive another 6 hours, reaching Kitale, for example, at midnight. That person is fatigued and is likely to cause accidents. Let's come to the question of the roads themselves. The roads, the design of the roads. I'm not an engineer, but definitely I think we see accidents tend to happen in particular stretches. And when we think of Salga, Mau Summit, Salga area, I usually fear. In fact, I'm taking nowadays roads to Ravine or to Cabernet to reach home because Salga has become very dangerous. It is steep. And when you see those 40-ton lorries coming down, if you are ahead of them, you're afraid. It's not even head-on, it can knock you from behind. So some design, the engineers to think in terms of designing our roads in the best way required. So, Mr. Speaker, what do we do? How do we overcome these things, these road deaths? One, Mr. Speaker, I think dual carriageway should be done. Today I was looking at the TV, news in the TV, and I was looking at the roads in Tanzania. The number of vehicles on those roads are very few, but I can assure you they have dual carriageway. So we need dual carriageway from Mombasa to Malaba. That is one. The other one, Mr. Speaker, is the owners of these vehicles. Mr. Speaker,
the Honorable, I would have loved to give you a little more time, but there's a lot of interest in this, so I'll have to move on and give this opportunity to the member for Matungu, the Honorable Murunga.
Asante sana Bwana Spika. Huu ni mjadala ambao ni muhimu. Kwanza ningependa kutuma rambirambi zangu za dhati kwa familia ambao wamepoteza watu wao, wapenzi wao. Na ni jambo la kusikitisha mno kwa sababu hivi majuzi tulikuwa tunajadili kuhusu maneno na vile tunavyoweza kupanua barabara zetu. Sehemu hii ya Jangwani, Bwana Spika, ni sehemu ambayo wananchi tukufu wa Kenya wamepoteza maisha yao na ni kwa muda. Lazima bunge hili lichukulie hili jambo kwa uzito, kwa sababu tunavyoendelea kupoteza watu wetu wa muhimu katika nchi hii si vyema. Sehemu hii ya Kamkuywa ninapokumbuka ni sehemu ambayo nimesomea. Hii sehemu ni sehemu ambayo watu wengi wamepoteza maisha yao, na si jambo geni kwa serikali kuu. Lazima kuna mtu ama watu ambao wamelala kwa kazi yao. Ya pili, wale wanaohitajika kama vile wenzangu wamesema, tunapitisha sheria hapa. Tunakaa muda mrefu tukijadili juu ya sheria, lakini sheria hii haifuatiliwi na wale wanaohusika. Kwa hivyo ni wakati ambapo lazima bunge hii, wale wanaohusika kufuatilia ya kwamba sheria inapopitishwa inafanya kazi, waamuke kwa usingizi, kwa sababu si vyema tunapopitisha sheria haifanyi kazi na haisaidii Mkenya wa kawaida. Ni jambo la kusikitisha. Sehemu hii ya Jangwani ni sehemu ambayo imekuwa kwa masungumuzo kila siku moja fuatilia siku nyingine. Lazima wafanye kazi vile ambavyo inahitajika. NTSA ni lazima wafanye kazi vile ambavyo inahitajika. Nilisikitika kusikia kwa runinga wakitangaza ya kwamba ajali iliyotokea ni kwa sababu maafisa wa NTSA ndio waliokuwa wakifuata hilo gari. Ni lazima yule aliyehusika awekwe korokoroni mara moja, kwa sababu ndiyo sababisho la ajali iliyotokea. Ninaunga mkono ndugu wangu Wanyonyi. Asante sana kwa mjadala mwema kwa wananchi wa nchi hii. Asante sana Bwana Speaker.
Very well. The Honorable Member Fundia, the Honorable Macharia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this very noble, very important motion brought forth by the Honorable Member, Mr. Wanyonyi, Honorable Wanyonyi. Mr. Speaker, sir, we all know that we are a country, a nation that displays very high political energy and very low energy when it comes to matters that affect the lives of our people. Right now we are talking about road accidents that have claimed so many lives in this country. Mr. Speaker, sir, if you look at what we are discussing here, I think these are issues that have been discussed in this House before and elsewhere in this country before. Therefore, we need to be radical, very radical in the way we address road safety. And Mr. Speaker, sir, looking at the issue of road safety, I look at it in three ways. One, we have very poor road designs. Our roads are poorly designed. I've had the opportunity and the privilege to travel to a number of developed nations and countries. And I've seen that countries are doing away with meandering roads. If you go to a country like, say, Britain or Spain or America, or even China, you see that they are doing away with meandering roads. Now, here we are told, because I had asked about that some time back, and I was told that straight roads are very expensive. But see, we are talking about deaths. So cheap is expensive, we all know that. So if we keep on having meandering roads from here to Busia, from here to Mombasa, from here to Meru, we'll keep on losing our people. And nobody should think that they cannot die through road accidents. So let us address the issue of our road designs. I'm not an engineer, but I'm a driver. And I know when I'm driving on a straight road, there are very low chances of causing an accident. They could happen, but chances are lower when the road is straight. The other thing is poor enforcement of traffic rules. We all know that what motivates a traffic police officer, most of them, not all of them, NTSA officers, most of them, not all of them, is not traffic and not enforcement of traffic rules. It is how much money they put in their pocket that day. So we need to be very firm, especially within NTSA, because this has become a cash cow. I mean, it has become a devil now. They have become, I don't want to use that word, but they have become negative contributors to road safety. The third thing, Mr. Speaker, as I sit down, is a poor attitude on our roads. We have drivers who have very poor attitude. If you could give me 30 seconds. We have pedestrians who have poor attitude. Drivers, especially, Mr. Speaker, sir, if you use Thika Road, you see a driver who can clearly see it's written on, keep left unless overtaking. But they want to remain on the left. Keep left and keep right, keep left unless overtaking. But they want to keep on the right. And they are driving at a speed of 10 kilometers per hour, and you are behind them doing 30, but they won't give you way. Mr. Speaker, sir, we need to address our attitude, and we will be able to do away with this issue.
I gave you an extra minute, but it looks like you had many things to say, but there's a lot of interest. We shall have the Honorable Wanjala Sauti, then followed by the Honorable Arbele Malimo.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, I take this opportunity to condole the families that lost their beloved ones. Mr. Speaker, it's quite unfortunate that within 3 days, we lost the lives of more than 80 Kenyans just on the road, and especially on specific roads where we have had a problem forever. Mr. Speaker, this country has become a crying country. All leaders are crying, including yesterday I listened to the head of state when he was addressing the nation, and he was talking about these issues. I thought the president was going to go further and take drastic measures at the head of this country. Mr. Speaker, this country people must be able to be taking responsibility. The problem in Kenya is that nobody takes responsibility. 3 days, people have died more than 80, and a CEO of Nature is still seated in that office. It can't happen like that. This happened, Mr. Speaker, in Budalangi. Just when we were campaigning, a whole bridge that is costing 1.2 billion collapsed even before somebody rode on it, a bicycle, drove on it, a motorcycle, or a car. Just on its own, it just collapsed. Till today, nobody has taken responsibility. Which kind of a country is this? Mr. Speaker, as I'm talking to you today, Goe Bridge, right from Usenge to Osieko, is almost collapsing. And there is government. They are seeing.
County at a place called Hula Hula. Mr. Speaker, these are 2 young boys, school-going children, who have been herding around that place called Hula Hula, and unknown men came through the forest and shot them down. Until today, we don't know actually who killed those children, and I appeal to the police force who are in Marsabit County to investigate that matter so that this matter comes to rest. I equally want to send my condolences to the families of the people who are at Salga, families who are involved in that accident at Salga. Mr. Speaker, truly accidents do happen in this country, in different parts of this country. But first and foremost, it is very unfortunate that every time something happens, that is the only time we come to discuss, to deliberate about what had happened and what we need to do about such an incident so that we don't repeat again. Mr. Speaker, where there is a problem, I think first and foremost, we need to start with the institution, the driving schools, who are mandated to train our drivers, the kind of drivers we have in this country today. Mr. Speaker, you must have realized that today, in the 21st century, and actually this period of time, that we have there is a breed of motorcycle riders who are everywhere running in this country, that if you happen to take a certain route, you will be able to see a motorcycle rider coming from the opposite direction, completely against the rule of the law of how people are using this road. Mr. Speaker, first and foremost, we also have drivers who happen to undertake driving courses maybe within 2 or 3 days, And because automatic vehicles is prone for everybody to drive, you start seeing somebody driving on the road. And while on the road, you can actually, if you are an experienced driver, you can actually be able to see the driver driving ahead of you is either drunkard or he does not have any clue of how to use the lanes. Like one member has actually mentioned, Mr. Speaker, you will realize that the lanes are clearly indicated that, according to the law, keep left. But you will find, as much as on the left, there is not actually even a vehicle on that of the road, and so that they can actually be able to, those drivers can be penalized. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support the motion.
Honorable members, the time being 7 p.m., this House stands adjourned till tomorrow, Thursday, the 14th of December 2017 at 9:30 a.m.